151 novels were considered for this year's Booker Prize. Last month, the judges announced 13 novels that made up the long list. In a few days' time, they are going to reveal 6 novels that would make up the shortlist. Now, so far, I read 10 of the 13 novels. 3 of those novels are not yet published, and I had difficulty trying to get hold of those novels from the publishers. But there are certain themes that have emerged from those 10 novels. So what's going to happen in this video is as follows. In the first part, I'm going to talk about type A novelists versus type B novelists. That's the trend that I noticed. And then in the second half of this video, I'm going to talk about my 6 favorite novels. These are the novels that would get my vote if I were a judge. Then in the third part, I'm going to ask you to come up with who you think will end up on the shortlist. I'm also going to do the same. So what I really want you to do is come up with a list like this. So first part, try and come up with 6 favorite novels from this year's shortlist, this year's long list, and then try and come up with the 6 novels that you think are going to make up the shortlist. And at the end of this video, I'm going to tag about 10 booktubers who are already making a lot of booktube videos this year. So if you're one of those, what I like you to do is make those videos, come up with the responses like that, and then let's have a discussion about it. And everyone else, if you're also following the Booker Prize, play along at home. Let's have fun. Hello, I'm Samuel Durham. If this is your first time watching my channel, I'm a playwright. My last play, Taylor Swift's Dog, won a major competition in England and it went on a tour with performances in London, Cheltenham and Buxton. Taylor Swift's Dog was all about corruption and hypocrisy within the publishing industry. The reason why I follow Booker Prize and the Women's Prize for Fiction is that it is in many ways a barometer of everything that's right and wrong with publishing at any given moment, especially what has been. It's also an indication of what has been going on in the last 2 years. One of the things I noticed about this year's long list is to do with type A novelist and type B novelist. Now, this is something that Anthony Burgess discussed in the 1970s, and then Martin Amis writes about in this book, The War Against Cliché. What this means is that the world of novelists can be divided into 2 groups. Type A novelists, they focus mostly on stories or storytelling, and they're mostly interested in character, plot, and all the other things to do with pure storytelling. Then you have type B novelists who might claim that they're also interested in telling a story, but in reality what they're interested in are the big ideas, language and experimentation. So type A novelists naturally mean people like Stephen King and J.K. Rowling, Nora Roberts, Danielle Steele, Dan Brown. And then on type B novelists, they're usually those who create novels that could be considered as literary fiction. Right, so most novels that get considered for the Booker Prize can be classed as B novelists, can be said to be coming from those who can be considered as B novelists. Now, on this year's shortlist, what I found is that most of the novelists could be regarded as B novelists, and most novels are B novels, because what's happening is that most of the novelists like Max Porter, for example, and Lucy Ellman, they're not really trying to tell a story. They're trying to do something else and lots of other experimentation, which is good and interesting. I know you can say that you can't really put novelists into categories like that because things can be fluid. But sometimes type A novelists can be a bit of type B, and type B novelists can do a little bit of type A, for example. For example, John le Carré can be a bit of both. And the same can be said about Ian McEwan and Hilary Mantel. And there are others as well, but not many. Most of them tend to stick in just one category. I do follow more closely what Anthony Burgess and Martin Amis are saying. Now, what do you think? What are your thoughts on that? I know things can't be that rigid, but it can be fun and educational to look at these 2 categories. So these are my 6 favorite novels from this year's long list. And in no particular order, first one is Oinicon Braithwaite's My Sister the Serial Killer. Before I go on, I better get the pronunciation right, because initially I was getting it wrong. The correct pronunciation is Oinicon corn, right? There's an O sound, not an A sound. Unicorn Braithwaite. I really enjoyed it. This is the one that I enjoyed the most. And also, it reminds me, I love novels and TV shows to do with serial killers. For example, one of my favorite shows on Netflix is Mindhunter, written by Joe Penhall, the playwright and screenwriter. And a lot of those episodes are directed by David Fincher. And I also like Hannibal and Dexter and Barry as well. And this also reminded me a little bit of Dan Wells' novel, I'm Not a Serial Killer. I know there's a long list of novels to do with serial killers, but what's really refreshing about this one is that it's set in Nigeria and it's about women, and it's something that I have never come across before, and I really enjoyed it. I hope this one gets on the shortlist, and this already made the shortlist on this year's Women's Prize. The question is, can it make it to the Booker Prize shortlist? Lucy Ellmann's Ducks Newburyport is also one of the most inspiring and audacious novels that I read in over 15 years. And it has challenges. It did test my patience in places, but overall, I'm glad that somebody wrote a novel like this. It is truly bonkers. It is inventive. And I hope it gets on the shortlist. Bernardine Everistow's Girl, Woman, Other is the novel that could be considered as a type B novel. I think it's worth comparing it with something like White Teeth or Small Island, which were more about telling a story. This one is not really like that. It really is. She's really is a type B novelist, and this is a proper type B novel. This is why I don't think this will appeal to a lot of people. I wanted to read it because I'm interested in her project, and which is about giving a voice to a group of black women who never really had a voice on the literary stage, especially in England. And I'm glad Valeria Lucelli's Lost Children Archive is another novel that I really admired. It's about an important subject, migrant children or refugee children. And however, I had some issues to do with it, because it's that I felt this is a type B novelist telling a type B novel. And underneath all the literary digressions, I felt there was a good story there. But she didn't get there, and that was a real shame. But at the same time, I'm glad this is the type of novel that got written. Now, if you want to watch a video that goes into more details about this book, I really suggest you watch Mark Nash's video on this novel. He goes into a lot of detail. He really loves it, and I think you will get a lot out of that. Chigozie Obioma's An Orchestra of Minorities, another novel that's really formidable. It is more of a type A novel, even though he does uses language in a really interesting way. He's already got a good track record with the Booker Prize. The Fisherman made the Booker Prize in 2015. And it's been a long time since a black African author won the Booker Prize. The last time it happened was in 1991. That was Ben Okri with The Famished Road. So we waited 28 years, and now we got two really good novelists. Elif Shafak's 10 minutes 38 Seconds in This Strange World is an amazing novel. Elif Shafak has said recently in a Guardian article that her mission is to give voice to the voiceless, and she does that, and she's been doing that with most of her other novels as well. I really enjoyed it, and I think it's just amazing. So who do you predict would end up on this year's shortlist? Which 6 novels? I think first on the list has to be The Testaments by Margaret Atwood. I haven't read it. I tried hard to get it from the UK publisher, but they said no way. Although Steve Donahue, who lives in the United States, managed to get it from the US publisher, and he hasn't said anything. He wasn't that keen about it. So, and I trust him. But the judges are different, and I think they're going to put her on the shortlist. So definitely, Lucy Ellmann's Ducks Newburyport might end up on the shortlist. Although I am anxious on behalf of Gally Perez and Lucy Ellmann, because this is one of those novels that has to dazzle at least 4 out of the 5 judges to be able to get on the shortlist. I'm not sure he can do it because these are judges who would have read a lot of novels this summer. And are they going to have the patience? Are they going to really appreciate it? And the other issue is that this is a novel that could be considered as the novelist's novel. I'm sure we heard of the expression, the writer's writer. And Lucy Ellmann is becoming more of a novelist. And I think you need to be a creator to really appreciate it. The problem with this bunch of judges is that four of those judges have never written a novel. They don't have any experience of it. And then you do have one novelist, so I'm not sure. So I am predicting that Ducks Newburyport would end up on the shortlist because I think it would just be. I think the novelty value would attract a lot of attention from the media and YouTube. So that Bernardine Evaristo's Girl, Woman, Other is another novel that I think is going to end up on the shortlist. Even though it doesn't succeed entirely, it's an important project and judges usually like that. I know Grief is a Thing with Feathers is one of my favorite books of the last 10 years. I loved it. I think it's a masterpiece. Lanny, on the other hand, really annoyed me for two important reasons. I'm not going to talk about that here, but the thing is, I think Lanny could end up on the shortlist because I think the judges will get all the experimentation he's trying to do, and also Max Porter is loved by Middle England and in publishing. He's a really important popular figure. All those factors could affect the judge's decision. Although every judge will say we judge everything on merit and all that, but the truth is all those other variables could come into play. This is why I think he will definitely be on the shortlist. I'm about 98% positive. An Orchestral Minorities by Chigozie Obioma is getting a lot of attention at the moment, especially with awards and prize committees. And I think he could do it. He could do it. He could get on the shortlist and maybe even win it. I really think that. I feel really strongly about this novel and also about the judges. I have this feeling. And also another Scorpio who's going to end up on the shortlist, I predict, is Elif Shafak, right? Obioma and Shafak are Scorpios. This is becoming a year of the Scorpio. And she too has written a really amazing novel. And I predict both of them to be there. Now, if my predictions were to come true, we're going to have a situation where the shortlist of 6 novels could be dominated by Scorpios: Margaret Atwood, Obioma, and Elif Shafak. So those are my 6 favorite novels, and I'm making 6 predictions as well. What are your thoughts about it? Who do you think could win? And also, what are the other things that you noticed about this year's Booker Prize? I felt as though that Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead should have been here. It should have made the shortlist, and I think it could have even gone and won it. But that didn't happen. And then we also got Marlon James's novel, which is supposed to be an African Game of Thrones. A really amazing achievement. And I thought this should have been on the shortlist. But the thing is, there is an unofficial ban on novelists from the United States this year. Although they wouldn't say it, but nobody with a US citizenship had managed to get on it. So what this means is that whoever gets on the shortlist this year and wins, I hope they don't get too triumphant because they're not beating some of the best novelists in the world. For example, there's no Colson Whitehead, no Marlon James, no Anne Patchett, no Anne Tyler, no Joyce Carol Oates, no Barbara Kingsolver. All those giants in US literature are not here. They all published novels that could have qualified for this year's long list and then the short list. That didn't happen. So it's a bit like watching US Open tennis. Interestingly, that's happening in a few days' time. It's a bit like watching US Open tennis without Serena or any of the big giants. And this year's Booker Prize feels like that. Also, it has got 2 amazing established novelists in Margaret Atwood and Salman Rushdie. But annoyingly, their publishers wouldn't let most of us have a copy. And because and Quixote, interestingly, is an important novel because that has a dialogue with the first ever novel in the history of the world, Cervantes' Don Quixote. Now, I wanted to review that because I studied that novel at university, Cervantes' novel, and then it would have been good for me to have a physical copy of Quixote and have a discussion about it on YouTube. And I emailed that to his marketing team, and all they could send me were links to the book, and I'm not interested in that because I wanted to do a proper review with a physical copy. That would have been really symbolic because that Quixote has a dialogue with the first novel ever written in the world, but that opportunity just went. So I was a bit disappointed, but at the same time, I don't think that Salman Rushdie could get on the shortlist unless Quixote ends up being magnificent. because there are many other good contenders that I read on this year's 10. And then Margaret Atwood, again, she could do it. But then again, this is a sequel. Steve Donahue, as I mentioned before, I'm going to put a link to his video where he's talking about the Testaments. He's not allowed to talk about it in detail, but I'm sure he will make a detailed video once he's legally allowed to do so. But I think she could still do it, because getting Margaret Atwood on the shortlist will bring a lot of publicity for the Booker Prize. I don't think she would win it. She doesn't need to win it, but I think definitely getting her on the shortlist will get a lot of publicity. And the novel that disappointed me the most is Lanny. It has to be. I'm just so angry. It made me so angry. It made me throw that book away twice. And I have a lot to say about it. I really hope it doesn't make the shortlist, even though I really admire Max Porter, but I think it's the definition of the word meretricious. That's all I would say at the moment. Kevin Barry's that novel, again, the only novel on this year's shortlist by a Cancerian. Cancerians usually do really well on the Booker Prize, especially Ian McEwan, Hilary Mantel. But this year, he's the only one. I didn't like it. I had a lot of problems with it. I thought, so what? He can do like this and that, but so what? There are other novels that are a lot more important and urgent, especially novels by Elise Shafak, Bernardine Evaristo, and that novel, The Lost Children Archive, and a few others. Compared to that, this is not that important for me. Anyway, what did you think? How many of the Booker Prize long-listed novels did you manage to read this year? Now, there's still time to read a lot more. So after the 10 or maybe 13 novels you managed to read, which ones inspired you the most? Which one gave you the most education as an apprentice novelist? My channel is for apprentice novelists, playwrights and screenwriters. It's also for people who love reading and who are also passionate about self-improvement. Now, if you're already a subscriber, thank you so much for subscribing. Now, if you're not, please consider subscribing. At the end of this video, I'm going to tag 9 booktubers who are already doing a lot of videos to do with this year's Booker Prize. So if you are one of those 9 people, I hope you're able to do it. I know we are under time pressures, but you're already into this, so you know what's going on. And everybody else, if you're also following the Booker Prize, consider yourselves tagged and do a video. Do a video with that structure, right? So talk about the 6 novels that you loved or admired, and so that you would, so if you had a vote, you will cast your vote for those 6 novels, and then come up with your 6 novels that you think would end up on the shortlist. That's the job. I hope you're able to do it. I have already made many videos about the Booker Prize. If you want to watch that, click the link on the top right hand corner. Now, if you're watching it on a desktop or laptop computer, that corner, click that. You're going to see a dialog box and you'll see links to that. If you're watching this video on a mobile phone, then click the link in the description below.